This is my 2002 MGTF 135 Sprint, which I've recently purchased, and it sounds like this. And today we're going to diagnose and see what's wrong with this engine. Right, as you heard from the clip, that sounds pretty catastrophic. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. I think it's the rod bearings, but we're going to go through our normal diagnostic procedure anyway. We'll get the plugs out, we'll do a compression test, we'll do a bore scope just in case that may have a valve hit the piston, and then we'll probably take the head off. We'll get underneath, we'll take the sump off and see if we can get one of them rod caps off and just have a look at the bearings, and then come to some sort of plan basically. Now the engine in this isn't staying in this. This is for demonstration purposes only really. We're going to try and repair this as cheaply as possible. So yeah, we'll have a look on eBay and just see if we can get the cheapest head gasket kit and the cheapest bearings we can possibly find, and try and repair this. But in this video we're gonna literally just take it apart and see what's gone wrong, and go from there really. Now to start off with, we need access to the engine, so we need to get the hood off, get the engine panel out, and basically start from there. So let's just get into it, I reckon. Right, first and foremost, we need to get this roof out of the way. So if you look at the back here, there's 5 clips around the back. You just need to pull the carpet apart and then just unclip. Just be careful though, because sometimes these clips can be tight and they can smack you in the fingers, and it can be quite painful, especially if you do it in winter when your hands are cold. And then hopefully we ain't got to worry about the rear screen because it's buggered anyway, but normally just be careful when you do this, when you fold it back. If you're a TF and F owner, you will already know this, but it will fold here, and if it is cold and the window is brittle, it will crack and split. So, but again, we haven't really got to worry about it too much. And what I normally do is I've got a bungee cord here that's attached to the mirror, and then it just attaches to that roof and just holds that roof out of the way. If you have got a wind deflector there, you can normally just put that against it and that will hold it. Right, and then it's a case of removing the carpet. And the sound deadening. We'll just sling it up on that roof for now. Right, and now you're left with this. There's a ring of 10mm bolts around here. Someone's changed that to a 13, but there's a ring of 10mm bolts around this plate here. There's 3 underneath this speaker cover. Now if you've got rear speakers, it's ideally easier to remove this to get these out. You can do it without taking it out. It is really fiddly, but these 2 here are quite easy enough with a ratchet spanner. This one here is a lot more difficult, and you do need to try and feed the bolt in to drop it in. And also you can start off with a ratchet spanner, but as you take it out, it will then bottom out on the speaker. So you're sort of like, yeah, it's difficult to explain. Unfortunately, I can't show you because actually these 3 bolts here are missing, which is quite a common thing, because when people take these off, they never bother putting these 3 front bolts in. So we've just got this half moon of 10mm bolts to remove, and then we can get this cover off. Right, so that's now exposed the top half of the engine. I think what we're going to do first is we're just going to do a basic compression test. So I'm just going to take this cover off here, the coil packs, and take the spark plugs out. I am hoping to try and set you up somewhere where you can easily see, but as you can see, it's a little bit of a tight area, shall we say. So hopefully I can set you up in the right position and you'll be able to see. Right, as you can see, coil packs are out, plugs are out, a little bit oily. They are original plugs, not the original ones, but they are genuine plugs. But they have looked like they've been in there quite a while. All look like they're burning okay. As I say, this actually runs quite well. It isn't until you rev it up that you hear the actual rod knock. So yeah, let's get the compression tester out and let's just do a compression test. And if you're right about me putting my tools on the boot lid, as you can see, it's knackered anyway. So yeah, don't be too alarmed. Right, so this is my compression test tool. It's just literally a gauge, and I've got an end that screws into the spark plug holes as the same thread as the spark plug. So if we start off with number 1, we can just wind that in hopefully. And then plug this in the end. Now, I'm not going to do this as an exact science, but what I'm just going to do is we've got the spark plugs out, so we know it's not going to start. I'm not going to bother disconnecting the fuel or anything like that. I'm not going to open the throttle as well, but we'll be able to do all four the same, and that should give us a reading. As long as they're all even, we haven't really got much to worry about. But as I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with this top end anyway. I think it's all bottom end related, but we're just doing this for shits and giggles, really. So that first one was nearly 190 psi. So we're just going to carry on and do number 2, 3 and 4. And then we're just looking for them all to be even at the moment. Right, so with that now done, that turned out okay. They were between 190 and 200 psi, which is absolutely fine. That's what they normally come out like when I do it this way. But yeah, happy with that. So I think the next thing we'll do is we'll just chuck the bore scope down there just to make sure there's no piston and valve contact. So this is the bore scope that I use. It's just one that I've got off Amazon. I can't remember how much it was because I got it about a year ago, but it literally just plugs into your phone. There's a little camera, and there's got a little light on the end as well. So yeah, it's quite a handy little piece of kit, that is. So well worth investing in something like that. And you don't just use it to go down to bores. You can use it if you're doing something and it's like a hard to reach place or somewhere that's hard to see. You can have your phone at eye vision, and then you can put the little camera where you need to be able to see to reach up, I don't know, underneath a dash or something like that. So quite a handy little tool there. Right, I'm going to connect it to my phone. Obviously I'm recording off my phone at the minute, so I'll just put in the little clip of what I find, and I'll probably do a little voiceover because obviously the bore scope don't record sound. Right, there wasn't really much to see in that. It was very wet and oily in there. I say oily, it looks oily. but it's probably just a fuel because I didn't disconnect the injectors when I'd done a compression test. But yeah, I couldn't really see much in there, couldn't really see much damage. So it looks quite grubby in there, to be honest with you. This car don't smoke, don't burn any oil, doesn't burn any coolant. It leaks a lot of oil, but it don't burn it. The exhaust is quite clear. So I think the best thing to do really is just to pull it all apart and we will go from there. Right, I think the first thing we're going to do is drain the oil. As you can see, it's very, very wet in oil around here. So if we drain the oil, we should be able to see if there's any particles in there from the rod bearings. Looks fairly clean at the minute, but we'll leave it to drain out for a while. And also when we take the sump off, that'll already be drained of oil, so we won't have to do it later.
A few minutes later.
Right, it's not really anything to shout home about. There's a little bit of a metallic shimmer, but again, not nothing really to warrant saying that it's knackered, if you know what I mean. Anyway, we'll carry on. We'll drain some coolant again, so that's all drained and out the way with, and that'll be underneath here, done for the time being, and then we can concentrate on getting the head off. Right, I think that's the biggest fail that I've had ever in draining the coolant out of one of these. I mean, I do this on a daily basis and I never ever make this much mess, and it's just gone to pot. But hey ho, that's probably because I was recording and filming it, and that's just the way things go. Never mind, let's clear it up. Right. So I've just whipped the wheel off, and I'm going to start off by removing this crank pulley, just because we're letting the car down and we can just start there. So all you need is a 22mm socket, and hopefully I've got a big impact gun and that will whip that off. Like so. If you haven't got a big impact gun, then you'll need a bar, and you'll need to hold the actual crank itself. You can get a tool that will go you take the flywheel out, not the flywheel, you take the starter motor out and you put the tool in its place to hold the flywheel in place basically while you crack these off. But you can't beat a good Milwaukee impact gun, in my opinion anyway. You can see all that oil in there, look. And I'm just going to put that back in, just to hold that gear in place. Like so. It's a little bit awkward because I'm trying to hold the camera while doing it, so you'll have to excuse the methods that I'm using. I don't normally use these methods, but needs must at the moment for your entertainment purposes. Just get that belt off the alternator. There we go. And the belt is in relatively good condition, so might be able to reuse that to keep the costs down. Right, now we've got that out of the way, you can really see the state of the oil leaks. Not really too sure where it's coming from until we get all these covers off. So let's get it down a bit further and then we'll start taking the top part of the engine off and taking the cam covers off and get the cam belt off and all that sort of stuff. Right, let's make a start on getting this apart at the top. I'm just going to rip into it basically and just start taking stuff off. I might talk through it or I might just time lapse it. So what I'll do is I'll just record it at a normal speed and then I will see when I start editing and see how long the video is going to be. But let's just get into it. Let's just get it all apart. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is going to start disconnecting, because this is the area that I'm at this precise moment in time. So I'm just going to start disconnecting some of the wiring. So that will come off with that. I ain't going to take this top cover off just yet because there's a lot of dirt and dust kicking around and I'm trying to minimise the amount that goes into the engine. So that'll probably be one of the last things that I disconnect. We'll disconnect this lumbar sensor here, because again when we take the sump off we'll need to take the downpipe off. So we'll just take that off and feed that down through there. Water hoses. So you can't really see that, can you? Don't worry, there isn't much down here that we need to really do. It's just a couple of hoses and a couple of temperature sensors. Get this bottom temperature sensor out, this blue one, that's for your gauge, this blue one here on the dash, and this black one here is for the ECU. So we'll get rid of them. That's the wrong size, isn't it? So normally the majority of MG Rover hose clips are these springy type clamp ones, but the actual worm drive ones that you sometimes find are actually a quarter drive hex. So I could use a screwdriver, but I just like to use sockets because it saves stripping the a little bit more. That's that off. And I'll leave this water outlet on the head because that can aid us lifting it out. Let's get these breathers off here. They'll come off with the upper inlet manifold. So just pull them off. I'll undo these airbox clips here as well because we'll get that out of the way. Alright, let's go underneath the rear compartment in the boot and start taking some bits off there. Right. Lovely. Get this air box out of the way. There's a little pipe down here for the charcoal canister. And there's just some push clips, and then this comes up out the way. Just leave that in the boot for now. Throttle cable. Always a bit of a pain to get off.
clip. Get this coolant bottle out of the way. Can hear something leaking. That's okay, it's just from the pipes that were disconnected from the elbow off the top of the head. Right. Stick that in there. You know when you drain all the coolant and it just keeps coming out? Vacuum line. Just tuck that up there. There's another vacuum line around here for the exhaust valve. That should just pull out, he says. There you go. Just a little one there. Tuck that up out of the way. I've got another little vacuum line for the fuel rail pressure relief valve. Just pop that off. And a map sensor plug, electrical connection. Just undo that. I'm doing these 5-10 mils. He says. And that should need to just take our injector wiring plug off the throttle body bracket. Right. you go, one inlet manifold. We've got a coolant hose down here which goes into the inlet manifold. So same quarter drive socket, just try and do that. You've got a couple of fuel pipes. Two fuel pipes. And that is that bit done. And there's a 10mm on a bracket that holds this inlet manifold in place. Just stops the weight of the manifold pressing down on it basically, because they're a lot heavier than the plastic ones. Right, so we've got this bit out the way with, we've got this bit out the way with. I think the next thing to do is to sort out the timing belt side of things. So I'll see if I can get you set up and we'll start removing the timing belt covers, and then we can time it up and start removing all that sort of stuff. Right, so we've got a ring of 8mm around this top timing belt cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8mm. So we'll just crack them off and get them out of the way. And there is a down here, just underneath the water pump, there is a 10mm there as well, but that's like a spaced one. So 9 times out of 10, you can pull this away and pull it up over it, and that comes off. So that's that one. You will need to if I can zoom you in. See that one there, just underneath the water pump there? That's a 10mm. And you will need to loosen that off. They do sometimes seize in the actual bolt itself that holds the water pump in. So just be mindful of that when you go to put everything back together again. Right, there's another cover down there behind the crank pulley. Obviously we've taken the crank pulley off already, but there's 3 8mm bolts that hold that in, one either side and then one just further up. So we'll just crack that off out the way, and yeah, we'll go about timing it up. So yeah, as I say, there's 3 bolts on this one. One is here. There's another one just here. Right, so to time these up, there's 2 dots here, and then there's a line just here on the oil pump casing that they need to line in between. Because we've got spark plugs out, it's nice and easy. So that is now in line with that line on the oil pump housing. So now we'll go up top and we can slide our locking tool in place. Right, so just down there, again if I can zoom you in, there's a couple of lines on the cam pulleys that I need to line up together with. The inlet cam says in, so that needs to be pointing in the middle, and the exhaust cam says exhaust, that needs to be pointing into the middle. If you've got exhaust points in the middle and in points in the middle, don't really make no difference. I think you might get a cam fault, but normally it sorts itself out. But I tend to make sure that the in is facing the middle on the inlet cam and the exhaust is facing in the middle on the exhaust cam. So now, hopefully I can slide this little tool in. It don't look 100% lined up though, to be honest with you. I think I need to go around a little bit more. Yes, I do. Only a gnat's whisker. Just like that, I think. And that should now slot in. There we go, and that's the timing set. Now we need to undo this 10mm here, let off the tension, and then we can take the belt off, and then we'll get these cam pulleys off. Actually, we'll crack these bolts off first on the cam pulleys, 17mm, and get them out the way with first, and then we will take the tension off and remove the belt. Right, what a lot of people do is they don't bother removing these cam pulleys, and then they pull the head off and they break this inner cover here. So I like to remove the cam pulleys. It's a little bit extra work, but it gives for a nicer job in the end, in my opinion anyway. Right, now we can take this bolt, or just slacken it really. I think I'll take the whole tension off, to be honest with you. It's only done up to 25 Newton meters, so it's not drastically tight. The VVC ones can be tight with the manual tensioners, but these ones aren't too bad. And then if you're reusing this belt, that can just hang over the engine mount here. But as you can see, this one's all caked in oil, so we won't be reusing that. Right, and now what I like to do is remove this inner cover here. There's a couple of bolts behind the cam wheels. There's one that goes onto the water pump down here, and there's another one further down near the alternator side of things. So I'm just going to remove that, or remove them bolts, and then we can remove that cover. I'm not sure if you can see down there, but all the cam seals are leaking here. You can see it leaking out of the where it's been pressed together, the cam carrier, sorry. I'm not too sure if the head gasket is leaking as well, but you can see this cam seal. Well, you probably can't see it, but I can see it. It's not in square. So I think that's where the majority of the oil leak is coming from. And it's all nice fresh oil just underneath there as well. So, and the other side, the back bit here, that's all the same as well. And one of the plates, they've actually RTV'd the plate on to try and prevent it from leaking oil out. This plate here, you can see is RTV'd silicone. So I'm not too sure if I zoom you in and turn the light on, you just see how much oil is around that area. So, right, we've got all that out of the way with now. Next job is to remove the exhaust heat shield and the exhaust nuts themselves. We've got a 13mm, that looks like a 10mm. There's normally a 10mm at the back here, but I think that's missing. So that heat shield then come off, and then there's 5 15mm nuts behind there. So I'll see if I can set you up so you can have a look, but I'm not promising anything. Right, now that's off, all the studs came out with the nuts, so no real big issue, to be honest with you. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to line the gasket and the manifold up together. So we might actually take a couple of these nuts off and the studs, say the two end ones, so we can locate the gasket and then put the manifold back on when we go to put it back together. But for now, we're going to take this top cam cover off now. The time has come where we need to access the head bolts. What's the betting? This is RTV'd on as well. Yeah, there is a thin line of RTV round it. Right, so the next and final step before we take this head off is to actually remove the head bolts. Now, there are 10 in total. The E12 female torque socket. Now, again, a lot of people make this mistake. They just try and unwind them with the position of the cams in the time position. Unfortunately, we have some sensor lobes going on, and they do foul the bolts when you try and take them out. So we need to turn the cams into a position where these will, or the bolts will clear these lobes. With the engine in time, that is in a safe position, so all the pistons are halfway up the cylinders, so you don't need to worry about valve to piston contact. All I would say is, when you take this head off, don't turn the crank unless you've got the locking pins in place to lock the liners in place, because if not, you'll end up popping a liner out, and that's hell. You'll have to take all the rods and pistons out as well as the liners, and sometimes they can be seized, so just be aware of that. Right, the best way that I've found to turn these cams is to put the camshaft sprocket bolt back in, just nip it up, and then that allows you to just rotate it around. It's always the way. So this one's now clear, so all them 5 bolts are clear, so we just got to turn this one around so we can clear these bolts. A little bit more. Right, so now these are clear as well. Right, so starting from the outside, just want to crack them off with a bar to begin with. And once you crack them off, you can then just zip them out with a gun. Right, so what I like to do is put plenty of rags everywhere, because when you pull this off, it will make a lot of mess, oily mess at that. So I'll just put some rags over the manifold, over the alternator, just so that when we start it up again, we're not burning off so much residue, although we are going to give it a bit of a clean because it has leaked quite a lot of oil. A few rags up here because we might have to have a rest when we pull it out to then put it onto the bench. So let's see what happens. Right, as you saw, it made a hell of a lot of a mess. Let's get in there a bit more. And that's the sort of thing that we're trying to prevent, really. You're going to have coolant and oil go into the cylinder liners. It's absolutely fine. We'll clean that out later. Again, we just needed to rest it on here to get our grip back. Normally it'd be 2 people, but this time I didn't. Multi-layered gasket. Not sure if it's a pay-on one or not. Doesn't say paying on it. So, gourd nose. I've got a lot of coolant to mop out of these anyway. So I'll just get my vacuum pump and we'll just vac out all these in a second. And we'll have a quick look at this head just to get an indication on condition, really. Now we've got head saver shim, which is nice. So yeah, let me vac out the cylinders, and then we'll get this into a position where we can take the actual head saver shim off and give it a good look over. Right, I've cleaned out all the bores, got as much coolant out as I can using the old suction. It's not looking too bad in there, to be honest with you. Still got some cross hatching on the liners and stuff like that. Tops of pistons don't look too bad, just something that looks like it's done a few miles. We will need to obviously give the block a bit of a clean. The liner heights feel okay by finger. Because it's running the multi-layered steel gasket, I'm pretty sure that the liner heights are going to be absolutely fine. We're going to be going to an elastomer gasket anyway. I don't like the multi-layered steel gaskets unless I do a full engine rebuild, take the liners out and put shims in. So yeah, that's the only reason why I put, or the only time I put a multi-layered steel gasket in. We're not going to be taking the liners out. Hopefully we can get away with that. So yeah, just going to need a really good clean on the face. Now the head, again, that's been skimmed, that's had the head saver shim in it, so that should clean up okay. We are going to have to stick a rule on it just to check the flatness of it, but again, because it's got the multi-layered steel gasket in it, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be absolutely fine. So just a good clean should do it. Right, you can see this is the head saver shim, and that's almost like a glue, so the actual coating on this, when it gets hot, that then not liquefies, but it goes tacky and then it sticks itself to the head. So yeah, so that's that. We won't be putting one of them back in, we'll be putting an elastomer gasket in it. And again, we will be going on eBay and finding the cheapest possible rebuild kit we can on these. And it is just an experiment, so yeah, if it lasts for a little while, it lasts for a little while, but I'm not going to be guaranteeing this work whatsoever. We are going to be taking this engine out and replacing it more likely with a turbo unit. So yeah, anyway, we need to get the sump off now. So we'll get this up in the air, we'll just clear some of this out of the way. We'll get it up in the air, I've got some more coolant down here that I need to clear up. I need to put my phone on charge because at the minute I've taken the microphones out and it's on charge at the minute. So we're going to leave it on charge for a little while. I'm going to get the downpipe off, the sump off, and then hopefully we can inspect or get off the oil rail, see what type that is, if it's a new type or an old type, and then see if we can get a rod bearing out. Right, hopefully you can see that and hear me. I'm going to try and speak up a little bit, obviously, because I haven't got the microphones in. But what we're trying to do at the minute is just to remove this downpipe. It's on the cat here, and there's 3 different size bolts, of course, instead of using 3 all the same. We've got 3 different types and lengths and sizes. So we'll get that off. I think I might need to disconnect the downpipe from the manifold. I don't think I'll be able to squeeze the manifold from in between the engine and the subframe, so we might have to disconnect that as well. And they look like original bolts, so they're going to be 15 mil. So yeah, I'm just going to crack on and get done. I'll probably just stick it on a time lapse. Right, so the next job, now that's out of the way with, we will have to pull the manifold up from the top. It ain't going to fit in that little gap there, so it's just resting on the subframe at the minute. We need to remove this engine mount, this lower engine mount, from the sump itself, because we need to get to a bolt here, and that just makes it a hell of a lot easier, if that comes off, that is. So these are just 15 mils. And there's 4 15 mils that actually hold the mount onto the sump itself. Sometimes they can be really difficult to get off because obviously aluminium sump is steel bolt. Right, and now we've got a ring of 10mm bolts, and we've got a 13mm bolt in here, which is, well, which is actually finger tight. That connects the sump to the gearbox. There should be actually 2 in here, which connects the sump to the gearbox, but we've got one out, finger tight. As I say, there's a ring of 10 mils that go around the perimeter of the sump. Now, if you've got a 160 that's got an oil cooler, there's a couple of oil cooler Allen keys that go onto the sump, and they are notoriously a nightmare. They're 8mm Allen keys, and yeah, you'd be lucky to get them out, or at least lucky to get one out. And to be fair, I probably wouldn't attempt this job without taking the engine out. But to get to them, you might be lucky to undo the engine mount and just drop the engine slightly underneath here, and then you get an 8mm Allen key onto the one that goes onto the end here, and the other one's on this one anyway, so that's quite easy to get to, but they are notorious for rounding off. So we're just going to crack all these bolts. They're only 25 Newton meters, these bolts, so they should come out pretty well, but we just like to crack them off first, because again, they are a steel bolt that goes into an aluminium block. So right, now we've got that sump off, we can get this oil pickup off, which is 2 8mm, and then we can get this oil rail ladder off, which is 2 10mm nuts. Again, it's not the operated one, so we might look at changing that. Again, it's all down to cost at the end of the day, because we are trying to do this on a budget. Try not to drop them all into the sump. And that should just pull out. And now you can see the rod caps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the liner clamps in place, and I've got a cutaway oil ladder so it doesn't block the rod bearings, or the rod caps I should say, and then we can turn the engine over and get them into position so we can get them removed. So yeah, let me just get on and get that them liner clamps in place. They just clamp onto the top of the liners, some head bolts that go through, and then just literally sandwich them in how they're normally held in place anyway. I will need 2 people to do this though, so just bear with me for a couple of minutes and we will be back to regular service quite shortly. Right, we've now got our liner clamps in place. This is the cut off bit of oil ladder that I use, and I'll show you the liner clamps at another time. But we're just gonna, I spun the engine over, so we've got number 2 and 3 liners, or number 2 and 3 rod caps in sight. So we're just gonna crack them off. And they are just a 10mm 12-point socket. And already that feels loose. That one doing all. Oh, I've left the bearing in place and it has definitely spun. If I pop that piston up. Come on, out you come. Right, there we go. Right, they've definitely spun, and I've definitely broken the tabs off, the locating tabs. But to be honest with you, I don't know if you can see that at all. They don't look terrible. Not what I'd expect from a knocking engine anyway. That's one of them. Get the camera to focus in, if it will. Yeah, they're not terrible. I've seen a lot worse, but the actual tabs where it holds the bearing in place on the rod cap and on the piston itself. Yeah, you can see it on this cap here. There you go, just the end in there, look. Just broke off and it's just caused it, there you go. It's just caused the bearing to spin, unfortunately. Let me have a look at the crank. To be fair, the crank don't look that bad. I reckon we can get away with sticking another set of bearings in there and going again. Now don't get me wrong, that's not the ideal fix and that's not going to last the lifetime, but for the here and now, I reckon you can get another few thousand miles out of that easily. Easily. Right. Let's get all the others off and let's see if there's any more damage. So I'll stick you on time lapse and yeah, I'll report back to you when we know a little bit more. Right, so we've got all the caps off. Obviously, you saw number 2, it snapped the tabs off there, which caused the spin. So that's not looking very nice. Number 3, not too bad. The tabs are all in place still. You see what I mean by the tab there, look. If that focuses in place, there you go. So that's the tab. Not terrible. Number 4, again, tab in place, not terrible, but there is quite a lot of wear on that bearing. And they are the original bearings. So yeah. And then number 1, actually material has come away from the bearing itself, which isn't very good. And this one here, look, there you go. So that's come away there. Now the crank itself on number 1 isn't as bad as it is on number 2. So again, that one I'm happy to put a bearing on. We can spin this back around again. Yeah, even up there on the other side of the crank, that's not too bad. But this number 2 here, that is a little bit on the, like, getting caked in oil. Would I be happy putting a bearing in it? I think that'd be okay. You know, there's no roughness on it. It's not great, don't get me wrong, but there's no roughness on it. I reckon you can get away with sticking a bearing on there, and that'll go for another few thousand miles. But I think what we'll need to do is we'll just get some wet and dry, cut it to the shape or the width of that, and then we'll just polish it out with some wet and dry. If I pull that back around again and just check the other, it's locked up against the piston now, but the other side don't look too bad, to be honest with you. So I reckon we'll be able to polish that out with a little bit of wet and dry, no issues whatsoever. So that's that engine all torn apart, and we've diagnosed that it is actually rod bearings. Now, with having the oil starved from the rod bearings, that's obviously worn the rod bearings. And I know what you're thinking, what about the actual main crank bearings itself? Now, when that was running really nice and smooth. It wasn't until you revved it that you heard the rod bearings. Now, I'm not going to say there isn't any damage to the main bearings themselves, but without taking the engine out and completely stripping it, we will never know. So, as I say, this is just an experiment. We won't be using this engine, so what I'm going to do is we're going to try and find all the parts on eBay as cheaply as possible. We're going to rebuild this engine with some new bearings. I might upgrade the oil ladder, I'm not really too sure. Again, the head bolts that came out, it didn't have the 10.9 stamped on it, so I don't think they're the high tensile ones. But we could get away with using them. We could get away with using the oil ladder, and we'll just get a gasket kit. Now, when this head was taken off, that was obviously skimmed, and then obviously the head saver shim was put in. But when they put the cam ladder back onto the head, they've actually used silicone sealant. Again, I think that's another reason why it's leaking oil everywhere. So we'll have to take all that out anyway, take the cams out, check all them, yeah, and give it a thorough good cleaning, all new gaskets and stuff. I'll order a whole gasket set. So it comes with a head gasket, the water rail gaskets, the cam cover gasket. I've got sealant anyway, so we'll use the proper sealant. cam gaskets, you know, all the gaskets that we need to do. And obviously we'll give it a bloody good clean, because it's just oil everywhere. I can't believe how bad it is. But I'm pretty sure that the head gasket was some of the reason why it was leaking oil as well. So yeah, right, let me get tidied up. Let's get all this out of the way into boxes, because it's going to be stood here for a few weeks while we get some parts in order, and while I find time to be able to repair this. It's going to take well, I'll probably spend a day cleaning, so you know it's going to take a couple of days, I'd imagine. So right, let's get cleaned up, and we will close the video out.
Right, so there we have it then. I've cleared it up, I've put it to a point where we can push it outside. I've just bolted the sump up underneath, just to stop any moisture turning the metal parts and rusting them, so don't want that to happen. But yeah, we found out the issue. Rod bearings, not 100% sure on the crank bearings, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be absolutely fine. Yeah, without taking the crank out and actually checking them, we won't be doing that. So, but normally when you get oil starvation, the rod bearings are normally the first to go. And although number 1 was pretty bad, number 2 is pretty bad, number 3 and number 4 were okay-ish. So I'm pretty sure that the actual crank bearings themselves are going to be absolutely fine. So yeah, we're going to have a look on eBay. We're going to buy all the bits that we need. I need to measure the head bolts and just make sure they're in tolerances. So we'll probably end up using the old head bolts if they're in tolerances, and the old oil ladder as well. If they're out of tolerance, then I'll buy the head bolts and I'll buy the oil ladder. But we're going to need head gaskets, we're going to need cam seals, inlet gaskets, exhaust gaskets, some rod bearings, and what else do we need? We're going to need a timing belt as well, so we might as well just timing belt and water pump as well. They're not too expensive. So yeah, because the timing belt is caked in oil. And we're going to probably need about 10 litres of brake cleaner to clean everything off. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. Not too sure how long it's going to be, obviously, until I start editing it. But I'm going to try and condense it as much as I can, but try and keep as much information in as I can as well. So some people like all the information, some people don't. If you don't like the information, then you can fast forward if you need to. It's entirely up to you. But some people have a good dedication to these MGs, so like interested in all the little details, shall we say. So yeah, again, thank you for watching. If there's any questions, obviously please leave them in the comments. Like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff, that helps the channel greatly. We've got memberships, again, if you want to support the channel a bit more, that just helps pay for everything that we do on this basically, or help towards it anyway. That's not going to pay for any of it, or isn't going to pay for a lot of it, but it's going to help towards it, and it just shows your support really. Again, if you can't afford membership, then just hit the like button, subscribe, because that all helps as well. So yeah, again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you when we build this back up again.